Bang.
Alrighty, guys. What's going on?
Hype $55 upside your head. That's what's going on, Andy.
Dude, Pump.Fun listed on Binance and somewhere else, Upbit.
We
down
have
4%.
new developments in the USDH proposal.
What do we have?
We have the requirement from Hyperliquid itself to be the quote asset of its markets.
Oh, yeah. They also pulled out of the validator thing as well.
Explain that.
Zoomer account. Hyperliquid removes team Hype staked with validators from waiting in USDH vote, opening up to a pure governance vote. After this change, the native market's weight drops from 75 to 66%, opening a door for a possible Paxos win. Native markets surged to 90% last night. So yeah, definitely interesting.
Yeah. Okay. And here from Stephen.hl, this must have been pulled from the Discord. The PSA to USDH bidders, the preliminary rules to become a quote asset. There's a 3-year commitment of staking 200,000 Hype.
Wow. To become a quote asset?
To become the quote asset, which is de facto the stable coin for Hyperliquid.
Wow.
Obviously, this is more than just a ticker now. Now that they've dropped these requirements, this is basically the requirements to be incorporated deeper into the Hyperliquid protocol. So at about
interesting
$54 and change, this is $10 million.
Yeah,
almost 11 million. Almost
Makes
$11 million to stake, and therefore deploy the USDH stablecoin as the quote asset. Obviously, then it's going to be the most utilized collateral on Hyperliquid. Few other requirements for becoming a permissionless spot quote asset. Some other kind of technical details: decimals of 8, size decimals of 2, 0 deployer fee, 200K staked Hype, like we said, subject to the following slashing criteria: a peg mechanism of a price of 1 USD. Future network upgrade could increase the scope. So I'd imagine that the 200,000 Hype, which is about $11 million of stake, would get slashed in order to defend the peg of $1 US. The quote, which would be USDH, whoever wins it, / USDC market, should have 100K USDC size on both sides within the price range. So they're actively asking for the bidders to put up liquidity to defend the peg against USDC. This is all starting to materialize in what launching a brand new stablecoin of this scale looks like in practice. And then, so that's within 2,000th of a dollar. They're asking for 100K in USDC with that super tight margin to defend the peg, and then $1 million in USDC size on both sides within a cent.
Yeah.
So effectively $1 million.
You have to send me that tweet, dude.
Happy to. It's Stephen.hl.
Yeah.
I just sent it to you there.
We've got a great lineup of guests today. We've got Sean from Magic Newton. We've got Stephen from Open World, and we've got Ash from Aptos. Should be a fun stream, and looking forward to just having Sean on first and just kind of going over the latest that they've been working on with the Newton policy protocol. Also have Stephen talk more about some of the legal side of things, and then into the Aptos RWA ecosystem. So yeah, we'll get Sean up here, get him on the stream. It's been some time since we've caught up with Sean, but pretty stoked to have him on, chat about all of the updates from the Magic Newton side of things. And yeah, let's get Sean up. Sean is up.
Sean is up. Welcome to the show, Sean. It's good to have you back.
Yeah, it's good to be back. It feels like a long time.
It has been a while. It feels like it's been a while since we did that podcast in New York, and then the stream closer to mainnet and token launch. Man, Sean, let's just check in. How's the last couple months been from a protocol perspective, from being a founder perspective? What have you been up to? How's the post token you got the mainnet and launch behind you now?
So it's heads down building and cooking. And as you've known, we haven't launched the mainnet yet. We launched the token that is used to kind of secure the upcoming like mainnet launch. But we're heads down getting ourselves ready for the Newton protocol. As you know, we've launched this sort of end-to-end verifiable agent experience for people to try out what that future looks like, right? But now we are building kind of the protocol that's needed to enable more advanced use cases. Like for example, there's a lot of misconception of the Newton protocol as a kind of agent builders, but under all of that, it's actually a decentralized policy engine, right? And what I mean by that is, to explain it, the internet is sort of powered by all these invisible rules, right? Underneath, it's called policy engines, and they are kind of constantly evolving, and it's secure on deciding rules like what movies you can stream, what payments gets marked as a fraud, which employee can access which data. So these are dynamic rules that's constantly updating, but they actually need to be more expressive, right, in the world of on-chain agents, especially when they touch people's digital assets and money. So we take that trust and security as paramount, right? So before more agent use cases can be enabled, like that policy engine is absolutely critical. And we're talking about policy engine where that can allow agent to trade up to, let's say $1,000 of this token when the market volatility is low, or perform certain actions based on off-chain, like real-time market data, which is not possible before, right? So it's a huge leap. There's a lot of work there, and we got to make sure that it's working, right? So, but also as we were building this policy engine, a lot of the teams like, wait a minute, you can use this policy engine for institutional capital that's coming on chain as well, because it's such a essential primitive, right, in the on chain. So not only you can use it for like agent guardrails, but also compliance as a service, right? So you can actually create tokens that's secured by policies. Let's say this token can only be transferred to if certain jurisdictional filters can be met, right? So those rules can also be encoded in the policy. So that just kind of expanded on the imagination, and we're developing several POCs to showcase the protocol capabilities as well. So a lot has happened since we launched.
Yeah. So maybe you could give us a bit of a background on this, how this policy kind of concept came about, right? I think a lot of people learned about Newton from the beta launch, kind of bringing out this verified agent capabilities for the DCA product. And I think you guys are building in the background, as you've been explaining here just now, this Newton protocol idea. Maybe you could help us unpack a bit of how you see agentic AI actually operating in this policy protocol perspective with stablecoins, with RWAs, with tokenized assets. How do you see the demand from institutional people, coming on chain? Why they need this product, and maybe some tangible examples as to like how this could actually work out for these types of categories.
Yeah. Well, so a major part of what we built and our focus wasn't really on capabilities of AI agents, because that's advancing so fast. There's like things that's open source is going to be pretty abundant in terms of agent capabilities. Where we focus on a lot is the trust and security aspect of it. So the guardrails for the AI agent. So the policy engine is what we're building to provide that guardrail, right, for AI agent, not just for kind of the POCs that we develop, but also an ecosystem of agents as well, right? So essentially, right, this policy engine is going to be able to serve the needs from two major trends, right, that's happening in crypto. One is progressively more like agentic finance, agentic commerce, agents coming on chain, touching people's digital assets. definitely needs to be regulated, definitely needs to be compliant and secure, right, through these guardrails. But also institutions coming on chain as well. Yeah. And I would say one of the bigger issues is like it's lacking composability, right? Because these are kind of more like walled garden approaches rather than kind of this compliance that's baked in on chain. Because it wasn't something to consider before. Like everything is purely on chain. Now the world is coming on chain, it's becoming more mainstream. So now there's actually more need for that, right? So and to list some kind of examples, right, of what we're thinking about. Number one is these, when you look at AI agents, a lot of it are not really autonomous, right? Like the human still needs to be in the loop to confirm every transaction. But what if the user can actually set these rules that leverages off-chain data, right? Like this real-time market data, like market volatility, sentiment, dynamic list of tokens. That's based on like a research document, for example, right? So the user or the developer of the agents will be able to set these rules, and then just trusting the agent can execute those in a way that that is aligned, right, with the user intention. So it's going to be, if we were to extrapolate kind of the user experience, so there's a lot of like chat-based, right, interactions going on with human in the loop. But the ultimate, right, user experience is going to be kind of, it's almost like a DeFi vault, where a user can deposit funds in a vault, and the agent can take what's in the vault and does things automatically, right? Following the policy engine, right? So this is kind of the extrapolated user experience that would be the most convenient, right, for an end user. So it will be able to kind of do that almost magically for users while providing that layer of trust that's needed for this type of automated experience, right? So that's kind of the concept on the agent side. But also when we come to like stable coins, so you could build potentially like policy aware stable coins, where the stablecoin issuer can embed rules directly into the token at the contract level, right? So you're turning them into like programmable and policy aware financial instruments. So for example, something more straightforward would be like enforcing KYC and AML check, right, for transfers and redemptions. You can block transfers to sanctioned or high-risk addresses. You can implement dynamic transfer caps or rate limits, and so on, right? So that's on the stablecoin, and it's a bit similar to potential RWA use cases. So these tokens will be able to carry almost kind of like these legal constraints directly on chain, right? So you could do things like investor eligibility, redemption logic, or regional exclusions, but not sacrificing composability, right, as permitted in DeFi protocols. So there's a lot of various use cases that can be enabled with the policy engine in all these fast-growing like new categories in crypto. So that's why we're like, okay, we have to 100% like focus on getting this protocol to be able to service all these increasing needs.
Sean, I'm just curious to double click on something that you mentioned about the policy engine that you've embedded into this protocol. And you're discussing how flexible in general it is to some of these different applications, stablecoins, RWAs. Makes a ton of sense why those policies are important for those asset classes. But in the market, we've seen a lot of these asset issuers go and launch their own chain. We're seeing stable chains come up, USDC. We were talking with someone yesterday from Circle, and they've launched ARC, right? And so I'm just curious, from a technical standpoint, what is the fundamental difference of doing some of this at their own chain level versus doing something from a third-party protocol, bringing that in to enforce some of the policies that, like KYC, AML, these other things that you've mentioned? What's the technical difference doing it at the protocol level versus building, an underlying chain for some of these things?
I think people are taking kind of a more custom and a larger effort approach just because something like this doesn't exist. And so yeah, I think it's like to bring awareness and so people don't kind of fragment the space even more and putting all of these efforts on like customizing, right? Because we're still operating on the paradigm that's established by Ethereum, when they launched on smart contracts. But at that time, there weren't like AI agents or like institutions that's coming on chain at this scale, right? So, but that transition kind of happened very quickly, but we're still kind of operating on that like historical paradigm. So I'm hoping through this that we can help more people come on chain with less effort, right? Especially from institutions. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the. I think ultimately the core concept that we're trying to get across here is we're trying to create a compliant and safe way for the biggest capital in the world to come on chain. And I think that's when you put it in the sense of understanding what these teams and entities need, you start to see the need for some of these guardrails, for some of these policies to be implemented as a standalone product. And I think that is what's going to get the institutional capital excited, and perhaps that's what gets the builders excited too. You guys have been building a developer network for some time. I've created over 50 million wallets, worked with over 200,000 developers, Polymarket, Helium, Wallet Connect, etc. From the actual builder's perspective, how will builders use this product? Why will they be excited to build using Newton's policy product, and how will you kind of inspire them to build in this new way from the Newton perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say there's really two things, right? One is to make it as seamless as possible, right, for the developers. And the second one is making it fun, kind of like playing Legos, right? But like to start with the first, we always practice a philosophy, even when we kind of pioneered Embed Wallet back in 2018, was this idea of, so there were kind of concepts around, so you can provide embed wallet, but you have to use this custom API, right, to integrate back then. But we felt like it's actually very needed to kind of embed the wallet, so to inject it into the ethers and Web3.js library. So if your DApp is already working with MetaMask, it's like a couple lines of code away from just adding our embed wallet. So we want to make it as seamless as possible. So we're doing the same thing with policies. And we have looked around at different standards. And there's one that really came to our attention called Rego. So it's a very popular policy standard that's used in high stakes like infrastructure kind of configurations. And that's used in like Netflix, CERN, Goldman Sachs. Not only is a great standard, but also it's very easy to write. So it's kind of like you can use JSON. It's like very comprehensive, very expressive, and easier to write and understand. So that's a standard that we were picking. Whether you're a new developer trying to pick up like a new policy language, or you already know how to program in Rego, right? You can use that. And then the second idea is make it fun, like playing Legos, right? So you want to make it modular, right? So these policies are essentially a collection of permissions, right, that you can kind of piece together, and they're deployed on chain, and you can kind of bring these templates or already established permissions into constructing your policies. So it's going to be like a lot of fun, just like smart contracts. You have a smart contract here and there, and they're all interacting together. Same thing when I was working at Docker, you can have all these Docker containers working together. So as a developer, kind of like that, piecing those things together like Legos, or the other analogy is like IKEA, right? Setting up IKEA furniture. Some people really like doing that. But you have to not do everything for them. You do enough so it's not really frustrating, right? And when they piece it together, there's a lot of like sense of achievement, and they think it's more valuable, right? That now they've played a part in setting it up. So there's like all these things, but on top of that, we'll be building POCs either ourselves or with the community. We'll be running hackathons, and obviously distribution channel with the Magic Labs developers as well.
Yeah, and you've also left a lot of inspiration and room for imagination, because like you said, there's not always, they can piece it together themselves. There's a strong sense of fulfillment and achievement from that, but it also leaves a lot of room for creativity. You guys are very smart, but the collective intelligence and imagination of all the developers out there can extend this even further. They can come up with use cases 100%. That are totally novel. But you have seen quite a bit from your experience in Web 2. You mentioned that, essentially the entire internet is built on these protocols and these policies that are all interconnected. How have you seen in your experience some of the policies that are still in place in Web 2? Like, how has those evolved? Maybe you could speak to what you've seen in the story that has sort of transpired in the Web 2 world as it relates to policies, and how these things keep the internet glued together. Why haven't we seen that in Web 3 yet? And generally, how do you think this is gonna go? Do you think it's gonna follow Web 2 in a similar evolution? Or generally, how should we kind of think about the similarities and the differences between policies in the Web 2 world versus policies in the Web 3 world?
I would say the policies in Web 3 world will be more meaningful than policies in Web 2. But currently, policies in Web 3 doesn't have like parity, right, with the policies
in Web 2. We're still catching up.
Yeah, so we're still catching up, and a major part of that is to create. It's not like only code as law, right? But also these rules are dynamic, right? They actually fetch from data in the database or various data sources, or regulations that's updating and changing. So all of these things are actually highly dynamic and constantly changing. So, but Web3 rules isn't really designed, right, to service that, right, kind of dynamic nature of these rules. So that's the parity that's the gap that needs to be bridged first. But where Web3 can bring a lot more is the enforcement side. So in Web 2, you can't really automate enforcement, right, for these policies. It's kind of like up to kind of people, right, and trust. But in Web 3, there are like economic incentives, economic security, right, that on rewards and slashing, you can actually enforce a lot of these rules through economic incentives as well, which I think is like you're automating the constitution and the court, right, through this infrastructure, which I think is a huge deal, right? And it fundamentally improves the efficiency of not just like checking these guardrails, but also enforcing them.
Man, so there's smart contracts, right? There's this idea that we don't need a third party to enforce on-chain. I think Shuram from Eigenlayer calls them credible commitments. It's all about kind of what smart contracts can enable. And so you're saying that in addition to smart contracts in this future world where there's more of this agentic finance, we need an additional layer of policy on top of smart contracts that allows essentially agentic agents to interact with each other within a given subset of rules. Now I'm curious, like, does this subset of rules apply to humans as well, or are you guys building this out for an agent to agent economy, human to agent, human to human? How do you actually see this, like who is the core user of the policy, and kind of who is the policy enforcing for?
Right. I would say because it's such a primitive, right, for on-chain, this policy, that it's not just like for agents, right? It's for humans. It's for like developers who want to leverage this primitive to achieve the type of security and trust and compliance, right? That they're looking for. So I would say the protocol is agnostic, right? But when we are developing POCs to kind of inspire the community and developers, we do have focus, right, around like AI agent use cases and stablecoin RWA use cases. So those are the areas we're going to start inspiring. But let's say someone else found a use case in just pure DeFi, right? That's still a use case that the protocol would like to support, right? So that's kind of the beautiful part with building an ecosystem and a protocol. It's almost like open source. People can take it any way that they want. And we are kind of stewards of the vision and making sure that we invest resources to support the categories where I think it's the most useful. But if someone else comes in and say, hey, you guys should look here, we're definitely going to take a look.
Yeah. And I think this sets up nicely because I'm curious about the go-to-market plan and some of the ecosystem that you already have built with Magic Labs. Because a lot of times, part of the best adoption of this technology is sort of showcasing what is possible because you guys already have the intimate knowledge of this technology yourselves. Other people, it's a little bit less familiar. They need to be, like you said, shepherded and stewarded. Mm-hmm. So how will you start to massage this Newton protocol into the existing Magic Labs ecosystem?
Yeah, so the fortunate part is when a solution becomes more mature, let's say embed wallet, a lot of people started asking for customizations in like for various scenarios. And one thing that they tend to ask for is, do you have a policy engine? So, but generally policy engines are like centralized and like it's Web 2, right? Kind of policy engine that's kind of fragmented, right? In different standards. Like each company does it like a little bit differently. Whereas now we have the opportunity to have like, to use this open agent policy standard, REGO, and sort of apply that in a trust minimized way, which I think is going to be like a huge change to how people are going to think about policy engines. So yeah, naturally people are asking for policies, and we're kind of figuring out like how do we bridge the gap, right? Is it a module, like a policy module as part of a smart contract? Or is it kind of like a DeFi vault that's backed by policies, right? So depending on what customers want, we'll be able to kind of build these different types of interfaces for developers so they can consume the policies protocol that we built. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Sean, I have a question from the community actually, and it's kind of tied into another question that we had, which was, just around kind of how you plan to, what Newton's cooking next. We got Pumpkin Yapstein is curious what Newton's cooking next, how you plan to stand out and keep users engaged in this wave. I think better asked, what kind of consumer experience are you looking for with the Newton protocol? Kind of what has evolved since we last spoke? What's coming next? How do you guys plan to stand out? We got a question here from Pump Hustler, Pumpkin Yapstein.
It's an awesome name. So I would say our primary focus right now is get to mainnet as quickly as possible, right? So then it can enable the consumer experiences, right, that we're talking about. But like mentioned before, the protocol is a policy protocol, which means it should feel like magic in the background, because like as an end user, you're not configuring like this page of policies, right? Having to do that is like a lot of burden, right, on the user experience. So we want to, so it all operates in the background, but we do want to help consumers sort of visualize policies in a great way. So I've been kind of tweeting these is because I can't wait, because there's, so I've been tweeting about the Explorer that we're building for the policy engine. So kind of like a block explorer, but specifically purposely designed for the policies. So you can visualize these policies and sort of check on yourself whether intent that's executed aligned with the policy, what the policies are, and we're doing a lot of kind of design iterations to help people understand this new concept, right? Because like we've been throwing around like, oh, should we make it look like a UPS delivery, kind of view. So we go into a lot of details on kind of educating and showcasing this new concept. But when it comes to like agents, we want to like we don't want like middle steps, right? Like we want to go all the way. We want to build a solution that's the ultimate solution. And to us, when it comes to agent, it has to be autonomous, right? So therefore, the policy engine has to exist to provide these expressive guardrails so we can provide the simplest user experience possible, whether we build the agent or someone else build the agent. And that is just depositing money somewhere and more comes out the other end, right? Like that's the ultimate user experience, right? So everything in the middle feels like extra steps, right? So a pretty like radical view, but we want to be there with the right infrastructure, right? And so and then when it comes down to like policy aware assets, like the stablecoins, RWAs we talk about, it should just be like working with any other assets, right? For the end user, while having the guarantee that that is trusted and compliant and secure. So being that invisible and feeling like magic has always been kind of our consumer like philosophy as well.
Of course, yeah. I mean, I think I saw a clip of you saying that the best technology, you don't feel it when you use it, essentially. And I think that kind of goes. Sean, I got to ask you about KBW. I don't think you're going to be there. I know a lot of the team's going to be there, but the Rollup and Magic are hosting an event, Secure the Future. We've got some awesome partners, ZK Sync, Open Ledger, Union, Hibachi, and maybe one more. And yeah, I mean, we're stoked on it. I think it's going to be a really fun event. I mean, maybe just give us some insight into the Korean market, right? Like you guys have been doing some work over there. What do you think is important for Magic Newton out in KBW? How excited are you for this event, even if you're not going to be able to attend? Talk us through some of the Korea stuff that you guys have been doing.
Well, I would say our team would be much more well versed than I do there, but I think a lot of it comes down to building that like in-person relationship, right, with the community, and so yeah, that's why we're very much invested in being there in person, and being able to talk to the community in general, because it's not like super large, but it's very impactful. Everyone does go very deep, right? Just in terms of like looking into and researching these projects. So I would say it's like one of the more kind of stringent audiences or thorough audiences even. So definitely like it's like a very great way to talk to people there and iterate on like different ideas to make it even more thoughtful and robust. So
yeah. Well, I hope you're fired up for this event. I think it's going to be a great time. I think Rob's going to be there. A lot of the team will be there. It's going to be the event of the week. One last thing for you, Sean. Curious what you expect the timeline to be to actually really see agentic commerce happening on chain. What is your estimated updated timeline here for when we really see agents interacting on chain with other agents and creating more volumes across different dexes using just pure agentic workflows?
I think I'm always optimistic on these timelines, but I would say there's some dependencies before that can happen. So when we're talking about agentic commerce, for example, us in crypto are like, oh wait, just have a wallet and use stablecoin and you're good to go. But people in Web2 are thinking about like virtual credit cards, right, as a way for agents to interact, and it's like more expensive in many ways. And that's because like the concept of wallets aren't as ubiquitous, right, in that world. But with this kind of new interest, right, in agentic commerce. People are looking at like wallet solutions more now. So people are kind of asking around about, hey, can Magic Wallet support these use cases, right? And so it's like, yeah, like it would help make a lot of these transactions much more efficient with a wallet and stablecoin. And once users are onboarded using wallets and stablecoins, it becomes much easier to automate these things with an agent, right? So I think yeah, all the things are lining up, and we're building kind of the right primitives for it to come together. So I'm like pretty excited about this trend that's happening. And then when it comes down to kind of agentic finance and agent doing investment, I think a lot of it comes down to trust. If we're talking about like mainstream users,
Yeah.
because it's mostly like, what, like agent touching, I don't trust that, right? But in Web3, like, you know, we're used to being more courageous, right, with what we do. But in Web2, the trust is a huge barrier. So that's why we're very focused on moving the needle there. Like, what does it take to convince someone that the agent is safe and can be trusted? So that's why like this guardrail and policy engineering is so important for us. And I'm hoping by our efforts and our focus, we can help that future happen faster. So
I think the parallel here is autonomous driving. Like a lot of people,
yeah.
I think, are scared of the car driving itself. But at a certain point, once this technology progresses, it's going to be safer for the car to drive itself rather than for us to intervene. Similarly,
100%.
same thing with money, right? Like at a certain point, it's going to be safer for AI to manage our money than us to manage itself.
Yeah, they're gonna check every transaction, you know, and just blindly clicking around.
Yeah, exactly. Sean Lee, Newton Policy Protocol. We're gonna give you some confetti, man. We got a big party in Korea. I'm not gonna be there. You're not gonna be there. I have a lot of FOMO. Rob's gonna be there. It's gonna be fun. Thanks for spending some time with us today, and really stoked on what you guys are building. And we'll see you on the next show sometime soon, man.
Yeah, likewise. Always great to catch up.
Alrighty,
Thank
Sean.
you, Sean. See you
Thanks,
next
man.
time.
Bye.
Peace out, brother. Alrighty, Rob, are you ready for the agents to manage your wallet? Because I am.
I'm ready for the agents to manage my wallet. Yeah. I thought you said something else there, but agents.
The agents. They're coming for you.
I mean, I think if they have the proper policies in place, then they're going to do quite well. Next up, we've got Stefan, coming on from Open World, co-founder there, and ex-blockchain lawyer, ex-Big Law, and the White House. I'm pretty curious to hear about his previous experience, and then how ultimately it led him to crypto. It's going to be our first time meeting Stefan. So let's get him up and welcome him to the show.
Yeah, man. Let's do it. Hey. Yes, sir. Stefan. We're gonna get you up in just a really quick sec, throw you on the screen, and we'll be firing. We're gonna talk all things law, DATs, tokenized markets, the work you guys are doing with Open World launches, and more. Thank you for bearing with us in the background just for one more second. It's a live production here. It's the Rollup TV, guys. We're on guest 2. We're going to run through. We got a fun rest of the stream today. Let's get Stefan up when we can and get rocking and rolling. And should be a fun conversation. I actually pulled up Stefan's LinkedIn before this, which is a rare website usage of LinkedIn. You know, here in the cartoon PFP world of crypto Twitter, we spend more time here, there, and saw some interesting stuff from there. So yes, so his takes. While we're waiting just a sec to get him up, quick look at some of the markets, guys. Things are looking pretty good out there. I mean, Ethereum and Bitcoin look strong, look ready for a push. We got Fed rates next week, likely going to get cut 25 bips, maybe 50 bips. So markets look better than they have for a while. And yeah, pretty strong sentiment shift in the market you can feel today now, where just over the last week you can really feel the optimism kind of return. A lot of people were upset there when Bitcoin was under under 110K for a couple days. I think people have forgotten where we've came from, right? And I mean, looking at Bitcoin at 110K and being worried is, you know, 2-3 years ago, you'd have been begging for this. It's just so oftentimes the perspective is missed. And yeah, guys, I think we've got Stefan up now. Stefan, thank you for the patience. Good to see you. I love that art behind you. It looks awesome. Looks very beautiful.
Thank you very much. Hey, Andy. Hey, Rob. Very, very nice to be here. Thanks for having me on. And I got to say, huge congrats to you both. Actually, you did some LinkedIn research. I'm not on LinkedIn that often. They push me on LinkedIn, and we have a lot of great stuff to share. So I'm like, okay, I'll do it. But I did a little research on you guys, and I watched your first ever video from way back in the day. And I saw that video and where you guys are at, and it's awesome. I love to see all the progress, and you guys deserve all the credit in the world. So congratulations and kudos to both of you.
I think you're the best guest we've ever had.
What a place to start. I think I remember rewatching that after we had done our 100th podcast or something like that, and it was just what a blast from the past. It was like looking at a baby picture, which is kind of funny. But man, you've had quite the storied experience yourself. In your Twitter bio, it says you're ex White House, ex big law, and then ultimately you find yourself in crypto. You've gotten to know us a little bit through our first podcast and done your own research, but it's your first time on the show. So I'd love to hear kind of what led you here. What's your story, and who is Stefan?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not as serious as I may sound from a bio. So yeah, I grew up in a very heavy engineering household. My father was actually a computer scientist and mathematician in the late 1960s. So it was all assembly, machine language, and I sort of grew up in that. I was a really, really curious kid. I was one of those kids who was like taking apart my parents' VCR when they would go out to dinner just to sort of see how everything works. So I was very, very kind of engineering focused, and I studied neuroscience and computer science, funny enough, as an undergrad. And then I ended up doing a stopover in graduate school, as you often do in your 20s when you're sort of searching for what it is that really excites you. And I studied international policy, but I had the chance to take a couple of electives in the law school there. And I ended up doing some research with a professor in the law school by the name of Eben Moglen, who was a computer scientist who then became a lawyer. And he's done a lot of incredible things, but I probably most famously and relevant for blockchain is he actually represented Phil Zimmermann in the early 90s. And if you don't know, and a lot of people don't really know the name, but Phil Zimmermann invented PGP, Pretty Good Privacy, which was the first open source public key encryption software ever. And it was like higher level grade than what the US government even had. And he was actually prosecuted for that because high level encryption at the time was considered a type of armament, just like a missile or a bazooka. And by open sourcing it, by putting it onto a website in the early 90s, that was considered a type of trafficking. So he was actually, the feds busted down his door right outside of Denver, and they arrested him and they charged him with all these very, very serious crimes. And so Eben actually went and defended him pro bono for several years, ultimately got the case dismissed. But I think more broadly, it was one of the first but very big important fights in the privacy and open source software movement. And so I was pretty inspired by that, and actually went to my thesis advisor in grad school and I said, hey, what do I need to do to graduate early, because I need to go to law school. And I had never really felt that urgency to do that. And I'd sort of always been encouraged that, hey, lawyers who understand tech, who come from a tech engineering background, could do things that really mattered. And that, like Phil Zimmermann and all of the other pioneers in the open source software movement, those people were a huge beacon of inspiration for me. And I, sort of left grad school and went right into law school. Just really, really passionate and focused on actually privacy and open source software. And I'd always been really interested in networks. And I played around on networks a lot, hence my name, Sudo Lawyer. Sudo is the super user command on a Unix-based system. But it's also this play on words, which is like, I am a lawyer, but at the same time, I feel like I've always kind of been a little bit more than that and not really identified just as a lawyer. So I'm sort of like a pseudo lawyer. And then, yeah, Thanks. Well, at the time, like lawyers and tech, I was probably like, one of 50. So it was an easy username to get. So yeah, and then actually I'd known about Bitcoin, but I always tell you, always play this like game when you're at a bar or someone. People always say, what price was Bitcoin at when you first discovered it? And I always say, I think when I first discovered Bitcoin, it was probably about $250 or $300, and then people immediately say, "Well, congratulations to you." And I go, "Well, too bad I didn't really buy it." But I was always really interested in the technology, but my first like serious dive into the technology was actually when I had the chance to work at the White House. I was still a law student at the time, and I worked in the executive office of the president at the Office of Management and Budget, but for the director of all of the entire federal government's privacy initiatives. And if you remember, this is a couple of years after the Snowden leaks in 2012. And so the US and the European Union had this basically data sharing agreement that was negotiated and entered into by the Department of Commerce. And the Europeans basically, after the Snowden revelations, they canceled that agreement. And so when I was at the White House, end of 2015 into 2016, there was a new variant of that being discussed called the US-EU Privacy Shield. And so I helped play a very small part in what was a really, really big effort. But one of the things that we were looking at were privacy preserving technologies. And there was also really interesting stuff with connected cars. And again, this idea of how do you move information across networks and how do you keep that information safe and secure? So that's when I really started to, and this was around, 2016, really started to get really, really interested in blockchain. And then I did a couple of, I graduated law school and I did a couple of clerkships, and I, started my career in big law, which was phenomenal. And, did a lot of the regulatory, financial regulatory, privacy regulatory type of investigations, and also product counseling for very, very major technology companies that ingest and analyze a lot of different data. And then I lateraled over to blockchain focused practice and help design and build a lot of the sort of iconic projects at the time, the last couple of years. And after, at that point, it was about 6.5 or so years into big law. And I found the environment like intellectually really interesting, but I had this like burning desire probably since I was a kid to like go out and build something. And I had the chance to build what's now Open World, along with my other co-founders and with my team. And it's been truly phenomenal experience. So that's sort of the short of it, if you will, and sort of how I'm here now. And I still find it pretty remarkable to sort of like trace back that history.
Well, there's a lot to dig into, and I think you guys were involved in the pretty prominent Story protocol that recently went live. I'm curious, generally, how are you viewing this landscape? Maybe we'll get into that one a little bit more specifically, and then I'd love to wrap up with some of the experience that you have in the privacy world. The SEC, I saw Commissioner Pierce come on the SBC. Stanford Blockchain Conference out in California and talk about how privacy is so important to blockchain systems and how we need to implement it for stablecoins. She told this funny story about her grandfather eating peanut butter with watermelon, how these two don't really seem quite intuitive, but they actually are quite complementary. She equated that to privacy and token-based payments. And so you have a long story history with privacy. How are you viewing the current landscape? And when we're transitioning from Web 2 systems to Web 3 systems, like, how do you think we're going to avoid the dystopian world of, CBDCs, and that may get some traction over there in Europe. We've taken a really privatized stablecoin approach here, but how can we make sure that even if, the governments become, really, really in favor of this technology, that they don't manipulate it to become surveillance states, and we do maintain some semblance of privacy across these systems at large?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting question and a really interesting thing that people ought to think about. I mean, there's a lot of density in your question there, but I think it signals the importance of really digging deep and trying to understand all of the different parts. So let's see where to start. So I think as a like fundamental point, privacy is not just now, but I think has always been an incredibly part of our society. And really, the Europeans view privacy as a fundamental human right. And I think and if you actually trace the lineage of legal doctrine, even going as far back as the Magna Carta, there are elements of privacy that are baked into that. And no, we have that here in the U.S. to a lesser or greater extent, right? And people can argue about, should it be better or is it okay the way that it is? But I think people would all fundamentally agree that it is a really, really important thing. And I think what if you trace back the lineage actually of Bitcoin, for example, which is like this, the big bang moment for blockchain technology. Which, by the way, it's not the first blockchain. It's actually first blockchain is actually from the early '90s that was invented at Bellcore Labs by Stu Haber. He wrote a paper about it, and it was actually to preserve a file sharing system, so that if I sent you a file over a network, you could verify that I didn't mess with that file. And they did some really interesting things with hashing, and then they put that on a blockchain. Another interesting fact is they still to this date, and Stu's an acquaintance of mine. I get coffee with him in New York from time to time, but they publish the successive hashes of that blockchain still to this day in the New York Times. So it's like an analog blockchain, and you can go and you can pick up any copy of the New York Times, and you can actually find the hash for that. And the reason I asked him, why'd you do that? And he told me, one, he thought it'd be cool, and two, broad distribution and huge decentralization. Anyone can go pick up a copy of the New York Times almost anywhere in the world. So if you think about if you look at trace the lineage of blockchain, and I always sort of get on my soapbox a little bit about this, is it actually comes from the same folks that were building in the open source software movement, and we're trying to build privacy preserving technologies. So we are in the blockchain world as blockchain participants. We are actually cut from that same cloth. And I think it's really important to look back to that history and to honor it in a lot of ways. And I think we see that with Bitcoin, for example, and the sort of pseudo-anonymous nature of Bitcoin and Ethereum and other privacy preserving systems. And I think there's remarkable growth and remarkable potential for like ZK technologies and ZK-L2s and just sort of ZK integration. This, I think, is like, there's a lot of really great opportunity in ZK technology. And I think part of the reason is people understand and recognize how fundamentally important privacy is. Now, do we need that in every single use case? No, like there are some things that we will care less about having disclosed, and there's some things that we'll care more about disclosing. And I think I try to encourage everyone, and especially myself, to sort of not think in such black and white terms, right? Because I think life, like most of life, is sort of very much a gradient. And so rather than create this, sort of like political tribalism of like, it must always be private or it should be always open, doesn't really have to exist. I think it's a bit of a false dichotomy. There are these really incredible tools that can preserve privacy, and we've seen them used in Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all the other ones that we know of. But it doesn't necessarily mean we need to have them in every single use case. And I think you see the private chains, the sort of CBDC concerns, like you see those sorts of technologies being used there. And I think in certain use cases, private chains are useful. And in other use cases, I think, public chains are going to be more useful. Stable coins is, obviously another really, really big thing where I'm just intellectually very interested in. And we are organizationally very interested in it and doing a lot of work in stable coins, as are other people, just because of the transformative power of that. And so there are a lot of questions that come up when thinking about how do you design a stablecoin system, or how do you design collateralization schema? What sort of infrastructure do you want to be using? Do you want to be using a private chain, or do you want to be using something that's a little bit more open source and transparent?
Yeah, and I think that's like that is the crux of where the space is today, because I think a lot of us agree with your points. We agree that like of the cyberpunk kind of movement of privacy, that's how a lot of this blockchain stuff started, as you explained with the very early days. Then you lead into the technology that is enabling it, which is here. It's being built slowly but surely, and then we're faced with the reality, which is that crypto is very much entering what I would call a practical era, an era of time where fugazi decentralization via DAO governance, or lack of product market fit under the veil of decentralization, or just kind of like general lack of adoption, kind of because we've tried to do things one way. Well, now there's players in the market, and these stable chains, Circle, Google, Stripe, all these players are coming in. NASDAQ is saying, look, we'll do tokenized equities. I see you guys just put out a post about kind of enabling tokenized securities not being a side experiment, being a big shift in the way that just general global markets are going to operate. And so, I kind of see this as two sides to the same kind of coin, where you've got one side being, look, we want to get crypto adoption, but we want it done kind of our way, which is a lot of the core people in the space. And then you've got people outside the space who are really just saying, you know what, we're going to bring a lot of these people on chain, and we're going to do it, in the way that we want it to be done. And so I think the question off of this side is kind of like, in Rob's example of the peanut butter and the watermelon, how do we bring these two worlds together? What is the glue that you're seeing for, okay, how do we keep compliance but keep privacy? How do we entertain the large institutions with our core ethos and our core product offerings? I'm just curious, from your guys' perspective of bringing this together, how do you see this convergence happening in the current era?
Yeah, so I would say the one word answer is to just be very intentional and intellectually honest with what you're trying to do. And I think our space and other spaces could use more of that, right? Just being very, very intentional. I think we've tried to be very intentional with the clients that we work with the products that they're trying to build, because we very much see the world as this convergence is happening. I think digital asset treasuries, like this is really, really interesting use case, right? Because really what you're seeing with digital asset treasuries is you are seeing this conversion. I sometimes describe it as this like atomic collision, either like two atoms, two totally separate worlds, and they're just like sort of colliding at this insane speed, and there's just like all of this release of energy. And I think people are trying to make sense of like, where does that energy go, and how do you actually manage that energy? But you have what used to be two very separate worlds, blockchain digital assets and public capital markets, that are now converging. And we're starting to see this play out in digital asset treasuries today, but I think we'll continue to see it play out in other use cases. I think digital asset treasuries, so I would say I would separate thinking about digital asset treasuries in terms of just intellectually, is it an interesting vehicle, and is it useful, versus like, should I invest in this one or that one, or is like this whatever sold debt better than this ETH debt? That's a more individual investment type question that I don't really, I let people make their own investment decisions, and I let myself make my own investment decisions, and it's a really hard thing to do. But the first question is actually a really interesting one, and I think digital asset treasuries are very useful when structured the right way, when you're looking toward this long-term vision, when you're trying to be intentional about what you're trying to do rather than trying to be extractive. Like last year or the year before, we still are kind of going through, just everyone in the industry, this like, high FDV, low float type of thing, where, VCs were getting unlocked really, really quickly, and people were dumping on retail. And so it's an iterative process. But I think in the DAT context, what's important, just like in that token TGE context, are you trying to do the right thing? Are you thinking about the long-term vision, right? And I think when DATs are structured the right way, they are incredibly powerful tools. The other interesting thing about DATs is I think they solve, in a lot of ways, they solve a very big problem that blockchain and crypto still kind of has today, which is a UX UI. It's really hard. Like it's a lot easier for all of us here to like jump onto a DeFi platform or bridge assets. But for most people, that's like really hard. Even the concept of having a private key is like a really tricky thing. And so, but at the same time, there's this broad demand that is just growing um, for access to digital assets. And so people, you have this dynamic that's playing out where you have a lot of people that want digital assets, and then a lot of those people just, for a variety of reasons, have trouble going on chain, or don't want to do it, or don't understand the technology very well yet, or don't feel as comfortable, or a compliance person in an organization that would be a purchaser is saying, we need to get our heads around this. Does this comply with this regulation or that regulation? And you're basically eliminating a lot of those issues, and you're saying, hey, just buy stock. Just buy this piece of equity, and you can go, you can go to your brokerage and you can buy a stock that's listed on NASDAQ, and buy into a company that is subject to existing and pretty robust regulatory frameworks, which I think is really, really important. I think Hester Peirce has said this time and time again, and kudos to her, and kudos to the rest of the team at the SEC that are doing the very hard work of trying to all figure this out. And I think it's a huge 180, of course, from the Gensler era, where I think they were not trying to engage with our industry in an intellectually honest way. And, everyone saw what we got. And I think we have people like Hester Peirce and like others who have been very intentional and who are being intellectually honest about the technology. And also, I think, surfacing an important consideration, which is there's a reason why everyone wants to list on the NASDAQ or on the New York Stock Exchange or on the American Stock Exchange and in the US. It's because we have the most robust, trusted financial economy in the world, right? And so there's a reason for that. That's a reputation that's been built time and time again. And it hasn't been without faults. And we've had our financial crises and all of those sorts of things. But time and time again, investors all across the planet overwhelmingly want to participate in the US economy. And I think, as a very proud American, that makes me very, very proud. And as a builder, all of us who are building in the space, I think it also means that we have a responsibility to honor that, and to be intellectually honest, and to do the right thing by investors. And so with DATs, when they're structured the right way, when they have the right disclosures, when you're pitching the future vision to investors, you're actually doing something that's making that process incredibly more efficient by saying, hey, you can go buy a piece of stock in this company that lives in a very well-regulated ecosystem for the most part, and in an ecosystem where the regulators and policymakers and the builders like us in the space are all sort of looking to the future and trying to build innovative ways to keep everybody safe and also deliver the most amount of value at the same time.
Yep. I think that's the right take. I mean, this is a difficult job, but they're starting from first principles, the right approach now, because at least they're receptive to it and they're open-minded to it. And they're not going to get it right the first try, but they're going to at least start to listen. And like you started out answering that question, is they're going to start to listen and become very intentional about what they're doing, rather than applying blanket, enforcement by legislation, type that of regulation that Gensler was putting forth. Stefan, I also just wanted to give you a chance to sort of introduce Open World, because we got a great background on you and your experience, but not so much on Open World. Maybe you could talk through some of the use cases that you've helped your customers and clients with. We've had SY from Story on the show before. I think they worked with you on their digital asset treasury company. So maybe you could just give us a primer on Open World and kind of introduce it so that anyone listening, most of our audience is also working and founding companies in the space and might be interested in launching a digital asset treasury company. So maybe you could just unpack that for us.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So I think that the basic premise of Open World is to provide highly trusted, highly impactful strategy across the entire life cycle of the token launch. That's at least how we started. We started with token launches. If you think about what token launches are, they're incredibly stressful and probably the most important time in a founder's life. And when you're launching several hundred million and oftentimes in our case multi-billion-dollar protocols, you have to really get things right. Like you have to be very, very precise, and there's very, very, very little margin for error. So what you need for that is ultimately you need like a really smart team who has a broad base of experience across a number of critical domains. And that's essentially what we built at Open World. Sort of think of us as a strategic architecture firm that's helping pioneer the next generation of Web3 and bridging this gap between blockchain and traditional finance. So my co-founder, one of my co-founders has incredible decades of experience in investment banking and help structure debt instruments for a country in the 90s. So you can imagine the experience that something like that brings, in addition to a number of other attributes. My other co-founder actually worked throughout the world in emerging countries to actually build communities and ecosystems outside of blockchain, and studying certain infestations that had really, really bad and really significant economic impact on the economy. So, and he's been an investor into Web3. So there's an incredible amount of talent that I'm very proud to be able to work with every day at Open World. More concretely, on the token launch side, we basically help build ecosystems. So the entity formation and understanding liquidity analysis and exchange listing, DAO and decentralization, Dunas. We just opened an office in Jackson, Wyoming in February. As far as we know, we're only one of two full Duna administrators who can launch Dunas from the United States. And we built some really, really nice software to power a lot of that as well. And then I think sort of another core ethos of and what we do is we actually have incredible banking capability. We're not regulated and we're not licensed as a bank, but we have an incredible wealth of experience in investment banking, merchant banking, this sort of new emerging idea of sort of catalyst banking. So it's like, how do we string all of this together? And we provided a lot of the strategic advisory on the Story debt deal, and we're having a lot of conversation with other projects. Many of the founders whom have been on the show before are having conversations with us about how do we put a DAT together and how do we do it the right way. And we're really leveraging our experience with our team on the investment banking side, merchant banking side, the sort of like legal, regulatory, policy framework, technical deployment. We have a head of tokenomics that does all of our incredible market research and gets us sort of most granular, up-to-date information, so that when we have a conversation with a client, we're saying like, yeah, here's what the market is doing 6 hours ago. Here's what Binance listings look like. Here's where we think we can optimize, add a little bit of lift to. We sort of think in terms of building planes. So it's making sure the plane is built right before you actually get up into the sky. You don't want to find out that you bolted the engine on the wrong way when you're at 30,000 feet, right? So, and we love building all sorts of different types of planes. We build, passenger jet planes, and we build supersonic planes, and we build like sort of, near orbital planes. So we love engaging in this, what is a very new field of blockchain and traditional finance. And we love engaging with that and really building next generation innovative technologies together with our clients.
I've got a totally long shot question, but I remember your neuroscience background here as well as computer science. Did you see the announcement from Alter Ego? These guys on.
I saw it. I think I saw it. I came across this morning, but I didn't actually get a chance to fully click into it.
Dude, this thing was, it's basically telepathy. And I'm just, if you haven't seen it and you don't have a reaction to it, it's okay. But I would suggest you check it out, because it is essentially telepathy that they've built as a startup company. And I was just
really,
curious
really cool.
from a neuroscience perspective, if you had any reaction to it, if you had seen it.
So I haven't seen it, but I'm 100% going to check it out after this. But I just think that's really, really interesting. Talk about networks.
Yeah.
It's been almost a decade since I was, or probably more since I was in the neuroscience world. But you're talking trillions of nodes living in our brain, sort of firing off in sort of seemingly random ways. But now we're realizing that hey, there's a pattern there. Maybe for most of us, maybe some of us is just totally random. But there's a
you don't need to
pattern
talk
there.
about Andy like that. We love his brain.
But if you study that pattern, hey, there may be actually something there. And I mean, you've seen the stuff with Neuralink, and I think that's kind of the premise of what they're building. And that's, well, I mean, talk about privacy concerns, right? Like,
Yeah.
on the one hand, you have this incredibly amazing technology. You can cure these diseases. You can give people who lost their ability to move their limbs the ability to walk again, and these are really, really incredible things. But I also imagine how that could be used or weaponized, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
was walking through Global Entry the other day. They just like, you don't even see where the camera is. They're like, hey, Stefan, welcome back. And you just walk through, and it's like, wait, how does this guy know my name? Right. So
Yeah.
imagine that, where like they're just zapping your brain as you're walking through. So yeah, I think the technology is really, really incredible. I don't know if I'm necessarily qualified to talk about it, but I'll be eagerly reading all of the developments in this sort of stuff.
If you want to come back on afterwards and talk about it after you've read up, you're certainly welcome to.
You got it.
Yeah, Stefan, it's been a pleasure, man. I'm just curious, real quick, before we let you go, where are we at in this digital asset treasury company saga? Like, are we closer to the blow up or to the start? Like, I just know there's gonna be problems in the future, but like, how far are we away from that, do you think?
Yeah. I would say Bloomberg, I just read a Bloomberg article this morning, and they sort of asking the same question. I hope that we're not close to the blow up. I hope that I think honestly, and sort of all jokes aside, I think what we're going to see is we're going to see the next cohort of digital asset treasuries from token projects that we kind of all know about that are building real product. And I think if you're a token project, you're building real product, you have the ability to demonstrate earning potential outside of just this idea of like, we're going to stack token at discount on balance sheet and hope the stock trades at a positive net asset value. But if you're saying like, we're building something very, very real, and we're going to change the world with it, and you can be a part of it, and we're going to give you access, you public retail and investors, access to this via a digital asset treasury to enjoy sort of the growth and the upside in that underlying digital token, but also in the future potential of that protocol. I think that's actually where we're heading. And I think what we saw in this sort of first iteration, version 1, if you will, is a lot of people just, in a way, kind of, and not everyone, of course, but a lot of people working along this like unidimensional line of sort of the strategy concept of, let's just stack this asset and hope that it trades at premium to NAV. And we're now entering this second chapter, which I think is a really exciting one, which is this, the bridge that's being built is now being really built stronger, and we've increased the carrying capacity to bridge these token projects into the traditional public equities market. And so if you're building a real product and you have a real growth proposition for the market, I think we're going to see those projects come in, and I think we're going to see them come in pretty soon.
Yeah, that's what we had Ryan Watkins on of Syncrasy, and he said the same thing. Like that whole era, that initial era, at least part of what you said, what is past, right? Like that is not going to work. But now there's just next kind of evolution of these companies, and I think a lot of them will have to use on-chain primitives as well to earn yield, or have different actual different strategies to actually create value, other than just kind of like this. All right, be the first one to it. Be early before people really pick it up, and then, that has faded out. So I also hope that we're far from the end. I'm not sure if there's ever going to be an end to this idea. There will probably be changes over time, but I see this concept of like these accumulation vehicles happening, continuously for a while for the largest crypto assets. It's just a matter of who survives, who takes too much risk, who blows up, who ruins it for everybody else. How does that impact? And then how do we kind of restart? And it's probably inevitable in some capacity because people get greedy, but I hope it's not too soon. And I hope that it's not too much of a fallout. I don't think it's going to be that bad, but it could be. What we just would not want to see is one of these companies that has a large ownership of the top 1 to 3 assets have a big problem, because that would just cause kind of a domino effect. So anyway, not to end on a doomer note, but we really appreciate your time here. It's been a pleasure. And yeah, would love to have you on in a couple months to get a refresh as to where everything's at.
Yeah, you got it. And again, thank you guys both very much for having me on, and congratulations to both of you on all of your success. It's very well earned. So I'm very happy to see it.
Hey, appreciate that, man. Very much appreciate it. Amen, brother. Speak to you soon, Stefan. All right, man.
Talk to you soon, Andy. Take care, Rob. Bye.
Cheers, man. Man, yeah, I mean, between that and the conversation with Ryan, I mean, I think it is probably likely that we're further away from the end to the whole DAT thing than expected, but we're definitely entering the next phase of sophistication. And when you get more sophisticated into these types of trends, that's when things get a little bit more wonky. So, you know, because you have to start to find different ways. You essentially have to start taking more risk to get the same outcome, which was previously available to you in the previous part of time with less risk. So you have to take more risk to get the same outcome that was available 3 months ago with less risk. And so that's kind of like how these trends end up happening. But hopefully it is more about the operating company and real businesses and less so just about accumulation.
Yeah, I think we're going to get our next guest, Ash Pompati, on
Maybe
the
we'll
show
get his take on this as well.
Just a moment. There he
He's
is.
up.
Ash,
what's up?
We're talking DATs, man. We're talking, when is the Aptos DAT coming, man? Come on.
Ooh.
Spicy.
Ooh. Let's just say coming soon.
Oh,
maybe.
that sounds like alpha. Haven't seen that on the timeline quite
We're just kind of talking about the transition of these things, like how, 3-6 months ago, when some of the early ETH DATs were getting formed, you could take less risk to get the desired outcome, which is have a premium MNAV to the actual underlying to be able to then buy more. But it's gotten a bit more sophisticated now and a bit more kind of crowded, such that you can't just do that anymore. There's now more, you have to take either more risk or have a different strategy. And so we're just kind of tracking the evolution of these things. But I'm curious your take on that, your introduction. Obviously, I met you out in Hong Kong, but I think it's your first time on the show. So we'd love to get a feel for who you are, and then maybe some of your takes from the more spectator perspective as to these digital asset treasury companies.
Yeah, it's been a minute. I'm excited to give you the dumbest guy in the room's opinion about this stuff. Yeah, I'm Ash. I lead ecosystem over at the Aptos Foundation, so covering everything from liquidity, DeFi, partnerships, grants. My majority of my career has been in scaling consumer businesses. I mean, I fell in love with Web3 because I felt like for the first time in history, you could align incentives with the creator, whether they be a product builder or a creator or content creator, and the user. And I'd never seen that in all of my history working at YouTube and Spotify, right? We were always trying to figure out how to align incentives further, and there was always friction. So that's kind of like how I fell into it. On the DAT side, I think to your point, Andy, and again, I'm going to give an overly simplistic view. Like, I think it's good that there's more in market because it sharpens the view of what makes sense, right? And at the end of the day, this is a vehicle that's opening up access to a completely new audience who looks at completely different things. The question I always have is, what is the tipping point of where companies or foundations or networks start to focus on serving, and I think that's what's going to be super exciting, but I feel like it's still early innings. And, for us, the thesis is essentially, and probably for a lot of companies, maybe outside of the big guys, right, like Bitcoin and Ethereum, is do you want an incredible upside on innovation, right, in one of the two sectors that's going to drive global GDP, right, crypto or AI, right? So it's like, to me, it's like, that's super exciting. And for us, we're from Libra DM Origins. All of the team on the engineering side are still here from that project. And so that's kind of what's exciting for us in terms of driving forward and serving this new kind of, retailer customer base.
Man, you guys got snubbed by Gensler so hard. You guys were right. Facebook was right. There's just like Stripe's doing it now. Circle's doing it. Robinhood's doing it. Everyone wants to do it. Chain, stablecoin, all of it. But
you know what, Andy? Like, I like the lore of being shut down by the government personally. That's how strong we are. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, dude, you guys are very focused on RWAs, tokenization. I feel that you guys have established a really strong presence in that kind of like more institutional camp, almost kind of bordering into like that enterprise world. You're running the head of ecosystem right now. What would you say is the tokenization thesis as it like stands today for Aptos, for RWAs in general, when you're looking at, okay, here's what we want to do in this kind of convergence between TradFi and DeFi in tokenization? What is your core thesis at Aptos for this entire sector?
Yeah, I mean, one is justifying the amount of effort we've put into making our tech the best. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The tech was always built with the mindset of powering money movement across a billion user app economy out of the box, right? Like the reviews with the technical and engineering teams at Meta weren't like hokey pokey reviews. They're like, yo, we're about to pass trillions from Instagram to WhatsApp. So what's good? Like, are we ready? So the beauty is that's available to the market. I think that has carried over, right, in terms of institutional and enterprise interest, and which is why you see us like really outpace in terms of RWA tokenization versus, given our maturity in the cycle, right? We're still a young chain when you think about it, right? We're top 3 in RWAs, and the people ahead of us are ETH and ZK Sync. You know what I mean? So I think for us, that's a testament to what we started building at Meta and the institutional interest around the Libra and DM project to adopt these rails carried over outside. I think now that we're a permissionless network, what you have to do is bring utility to the users, right? So it's essentially like, how are we thinking about all of that stuff being utilized in DeFi? And I think the first step for us was that I took was, number one, have homegrown DeFi protocols that plug fundamental gaps, right? That's important, but not always interesting, like across the board, right? Second was bringing on partners like Aave and Chainlink to button up the ecosystem to say, okay, when these assets are ready to be utilized, it's fucking like,
It's
military grade shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we're there, like we're there. And so now it's about really lighting it up. And, when I think about like Aptos, right, my biggest like cringe is basically us thinking of ourselves as a closed ecosystem. Like I want our chain to be invisible, and I want it to just make things work. And so that's really how we're thinking of the future. So obviously trading, all of those things happening on the network, but really just using Aptos Rails to have a decentralized environment that feels UX wise like a centralized environment. That's super important, but there's a whole nother hill to climb in unlocking the next wave of adoption onto crypto.
And like the institutions are coming, they're here. A lot of them are choosing these chains. Like why? What do you think is the unique value proposition of Aptos without trash talking the other chains too hard? Like what is the value proposition there? What is the competitive advantage that Aptos brings to these institutions that would make them choose Aptos for their chain of choice?
Yeah, I mean, I think for them, right, they take a lot of effort and due diligence, right, for a good reason. I think the benefit of us is we've been talking with them while we were at Meta, right, and so they knew the team, they knew the pedigree, but we also developed a unique smart contracting language called Move at Meta, right? So basically, Meta went and they said, hey, let's look at all this smart contract architecture. Can we actually use it to power our apps and services? And the answer was no. So we're going to develop a unique one. And so it met a level of security that was required from institutions. And so I think that's for them something where they were like, amazing tech for a billion users and institutional grade smart contracting language makes sense for us. On the flip side, it's a challenge for me too, right, to onboard developers. Because, while that is amazing for institutions, developers are also like, man, I know, like I'm EVM, SVM, like what the fuck is moving? And so that's kind of the trade-off there, but we're operating from a point of advantage.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that you guys have as far as this like core concept is this global trading engine. And you put out this really long post the other day, maybe about a month ago. And one key thing that has stuck out is this launch of Decibel, a new on-chain trading venue. built between the Decibel team and Aptos Labs. And so it seems like you guys are almost incubating this premium on-chain platform for trading into the Aptos ecosystem. What is the state of this Decibel product being launched? How is this going to work? What is this product?
Yeah, I think it starts from a simple thesis of one, I consider Aptos Labs the most well-funded ecosystem team, as me starting at the foundation. So I go to them and I say, ship fucking huge products. Let's go.
Yeah.
And so I think this is one of the two big bets, and there's a third one, right? And I think the insight here is, and maybe you guys agree or disagree, it is insane to direct an everyday user on how to make money in crypto, right? Like outside of the exchanges, right? You got to go explore different ecosystems. You spend 6 months getting rugged by like faulty protocols. And at the end of the day, like if I go to my homie and I'm like, yo, like we're on the street in New York, and I say, hey man, there's like so many money making opportunities in crypto and it's fun too. What are they going to do? They're going to pull out their phone and be like, where do I go? Right. And so I think like Decibel as a start is essentially us saying there needs to be a singular interface for people to get the best of DeFi in a trusted and seamless manner. The second piece of Decibel is, our bet is that there's going to be different varieties of user in terms of risk appetite. Right. So like trading perps is like a high, that's turbo, you know what I mean, in many regards. Yeah. Right. But like, why should you have to flip to a different interface to just get a passive yield? Right. It doesn't really kind of make sense. And why can't you have multiple asset types to service collateral? Maybe your yield can be your collateral. So I think for us, that's kind of where we saw the opportunity. That being said, I'm super bullish on picking ecosystem teams to fit into that stack. And so essentially with the growth of Aptos and the Decibel product, we can create some unicorns out of some homegrown startup teams as well, which is truly amazing. That is coming to mainnet in the next 6 months, which is super exciting.
So is this like your Hyperliquid competitor?
Yeah, I remember when you said, I said, what if Hyperliquid was built on Aptos? And you were like, yeah, what if, dude?
I feel like I was giving you so much. I was giving you a full earful back in Hong Kong. Just
I love it, man. I mean, dude, Hyperliquid's broken all of our brains, right? I mean, like for me, maybe you guys too, right? It's the perfect symbol of what product market fit looks like in terms of value accrual for retail. It's just kind of like, wow, it's the perfect synergy. It's almost like peak NFTs, like, it's just like, wow, what a beautiful unison.
Yeah.
And now they're building towards kind of decentralization and incubating an ecosystem, and we are building towards like building apps that can scale to millions. So it's an exciting time, and I think the pie is pretty huge.
Yeah, and you guys have a full kind of native ecosystem here as well. I mean, if I look at that article, I mean, you list tons of different DeFi apps. I mean, I guess my main concern is kind of similar to the Mega ETH situation, which is they launched this Athena USDM stablecoin in partnership with Athena to bring like this native stablecoin to their chain, which effectively makes it impossible for any other stablecoin to compete on that chain. There was already a project called Cap Labs, DeFi Dave's company, which is fortunately just building on top of it and not really a direct competitor. We had him on yesterday. But when you're thinking about like incubating Decibel into the Aptos ecosystem, how do you build this without pushing the current DEXs and DeFi applications out? Like, are you able to aggregate them in some capacity? Is it going to be a direct competitor? Just like, how do you go about kind of dogfooding your own infrastructure versus competing, with your own ecosystem? How do you kind of balance that?
Yeah, I mean, for one, I think it's an amazing accelerant for ecosystem teams to push further. Like, if you're smart, you should outship labs. You know what I'm saying? And basically move fast and move through kind of like the tunnel they open up of awareness and be like, actually, I'm here and I'm better. Number one, that might be like a controversial take, but I think that's my job to invigorate on that end. I think number two, again, Decibel is it is not a singular monolithic product. It is a stack of products, and there's tons of products that can power the backends. I think Phantom was a great example of this with Jupiter, right? Like when the airdrop season was going crazy, like why was Phantom such an amazing place to like swap tokens? It's because Jupiter was in the background powering it. What did that do? It drove a ton of transaction and fee volume on Jupiter, and then there was a crazy Jupiter airdrop. I believe in the same, you know. I think there are elegant ways to stack products in the back end and not disrupt the user experience. Not everyone's going to make it, but I think the smart ones will.
Yeah, and you mentioned, you know, Hyperliquid's done a great job of sort of providing this value accrual mechanism to retail. Phantom, Rabby are starting to implement some of the Hyperliquid perpetual integrations in their back end, and it's all going to be invisible, like you mentioned. And now I might be kind of putting some things together here. You tell me if I'm on the right track. I think there's an ETF that's kind of on the table for Aptos, and so that's on one side, right? And then on the other side, we're also seeing this tokenized stock movement. I think NASDAQ said that, you know, they filed that they want to see more tokenized offerings in parallel to public offerings. And then BlackRock today again said that they want to try to put ETFs on chain and just do more of their business on blockchain rails. All of the front ends own the user relationships, like all of these regulated brokerages are still going to offer all these products. But then, you know, on the back end, there's going to have to be some sort of blockchain rails to handle the on-chain tokenized part of these ETFs and these public offerings. So is that sort of are we pushing in the right direction here, especially as Aptos gets some of these products itself in the more traditional financial world? Will we soon see more of that reflected on Aptos chain? But, you know, retail won't know, but us kind of being in the industry, is that sort of is that the vibe? Is that the direction that we're heading?
Yeah, 100%. I think a couple things. One, structured financial asset issuance is like priority number one for us. We are definitely being a little bit more thoughtful in terms of what standards we adopt, because, you know, the benefit of these things is you could trade stocks today, like, and you see the behavior of what people want. Crypto adds a nice little sauce to it, right? But these different standards that exist, what's the liquidity? Is it getting adoption in really robust ecosystems like Solana? Is someone coming up with a new standard that's a bit more elegant? So we're definitely, you know, we're going to light those things up, but we want to be a little bit more thoughtful on some of those things. I think another piece is the trend of these, let's say these people who own the front end customer relationship. What do they want in terms of customization on a blockchain? The cool news is that we've actually started to design the infrastructure. We call it namespace right now. That's not an official name. Of essentially, you could essentially use an Aptos Move grade blockchain and customize it in your own way. That's pretty cool. And so that's one of those things where, you know, we think of being proactive and in building things and designing things, and we see the market kind of wanting some customization, and so we're going to have a great offering. So that's kind of the way I look at it. You know, I feel also the biggest arb, right, with equities really that blockchain can give is is bridging the gap between emerging markets and first world capital markets. That's it. That's the multi-trillion-dollar gap, right? If a guy in Nigeria can buy Tesla stock in like a second, right, and immediately have all of the rights that someone who bought Tesla stock had, that's the multi-trillion-dollar opportunity. And I think right now we're just kind of scratching the surface, you know, but that's kind of where we're headed.
Yeah, man, I dug up a new Fidelity investment fund on RWA XYZ, which those guys are big fans of yours. And, you know, they've got this Ondo collaboration doing this kind of treasuries on chain. I just found a new repo product as well. The RWA XYZ guys have been hooking me up with the hidden alpha on the platform. And, you know, I just keep looking at this and I'm like, I feel like I'm looking at DeFi Llama in 2020 when I'm just like, all right, you know, TVL on Ethereum L1 for DeFi is just like, all right, 10 bill, 20 bill, 30 bill. I think it's at like 280 billion right now, including stable coins. Dude, it feels like this is going to hit like $3 trillion in like the next like 2 to 3 years, you know? And if I look at Aptos in terms of the market, you guys are sitting at a nice, pretty $4.48 today. What is the 10x for Aptos? How do you guys 10x this thing in terms of this tokenization RWA trend is about to take off? We're going to get to multiple trillions of dollars of stablecoins on chain. Well, we're going to tokenize equities and everything in the like, be integrated with NASDAQ. How do we get Aptos 10x from here? What is your, how do you guys ride this wave and be a strong player in it? Close us out with some bullishness here.
Yeah, I believe it's good business to buy an apartment, number one. Number two, the way I look at it is our fundamentals have never been stronger, and the price doesn't reflect that growth. And so I think we're going to be in an amazing era in terms of 10xing from here. There's two things. One is having these demand vehicles that access a different type of user base. Now, our value proposition is really interesting, right? We are the third or fourth gen, however you want to look at it, high performance blockchain class. We've been in market 3 years. We don't go down. We have all of the founding team on the engineering side still here. We're going to be here forever, right? We're well funded, right? That's never an issue. So we're here in for the long haul. That's number one. Number two is Decibel is going to bring a ton of concentrated liquidity to the network, right? And look, we are not like trying to say, oh yeah, like Hyperliquid today, Decibel tomorrow. We're talking about expanding the pie and growing market share in a significant way. I think the second thing is Shelby. Shelby is an amazing opportunity that I don't think any of us have done justice in terms of framing in the context of the wider Web3 industry, right? One thing, Andy, that I always think about is, the internet ad market is about to hit $1 trillion a year by 2030. The amount of revenue generated from on-chain trading is $4 billion a year. Like, we have not onboarded or created the value to be exchanged to reach the level of like internet scale, even close. And Shelby for us is the linchpin of unlocking the decentralized YouTube, the decentralized Twitch, a new creator economy, permissionless content, or censorship resistant content. And that's an area where partnering with Jump and people with the long view are basically like, yeah, like we're fucking going in that direction. The last 10 years, DeFi's kind of looked the same. I mean, just to be very honest, outside of the meme coin craze. And so now it's about how do you bring all of that other shit that's happening on the internet on chain. And so Shelby is that next phase.
So check this out. Oracle stock jumps up 43% yesterday on the news of a $300 billion computing deal with OpenAI. And our boy Avery throws us a little quote tweet on it. It says, the cloud opportunity in AI is insane. Oracle expects its revenue to hit 144 billion by 2030. The broader market will be in the trillions. Bullish that the first real-time hot decentralized cloud infra, Shelby, will be a major player in this space. Cheaper, faster, globally accessible, and built by the best, and Jump in Aptos. And so basically what you're saying here is that the opportunity in this real-time decentralized cloud infrastructure for AI, for this, if we just can think about the demand for compute just being in a linear growth phase right now because of, practically exponential, what we can call it linear because of the infinite AI investment. Your thesis with Shelby is that it will be positioned to be the optimal, like, kind of decentralized version of a lot of these, centralized incumbents, which I think we can all understand the positive impacts of that.
100%. It anchors to the internet's onboarding of global society is what I would say. And that's what's going to be super fucking awesome.
And then you got the DAT coming to get this token out of the gutter. No, I'm just messing around.
Listen,
coming soon.
It's always smart to buy an apartment.
What does that mean?
Dude, the ticker's APT.
Apartment. Buy an apartment.
Rob, I'm all good here on my thoughts and questions. I think we got a lot of them out. Do you have anything else, man? Or Ash, anything on your mind?
No, I
Nothing
appreciate
from me,
you guys.
boss.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for the time. I've been a long time listener, first time caller. So excited for you guys too. You guys fucking crush it.
Thanks, man.
Onwards.
It feels like a
it,
call-in more, right? It's not like a podcast. It's like you're calling in. It's like you've done podcasts, right?
I have done podcasts. They're
Does this feel
sick.
different?
This feels great. This is like a hang for sure.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of like the goal of all this is to reduce the time commitment, reduce the effort, reduce the prepreration, just make it much more real. I mean, honestly.
100%. It's been amazing. Thank you so much.
All right, Ash. Thanks, man.
All
Cheers.
right.
Cheers to you, buddy.
We'll see you next time, man.
Bye.
Man, buy an apartment, Rob. Buy an apartment, buddy.
When he said that at first, I was like,
He's
he's just taking profits.
Yeah,
Unlocks it, but
I was like,
no,
all right.
APT,
So how do we 10x this thing? He goes, buy an apartment. I was like, okay. All right, Rob. Well, that was a good stream. It was nice and tight, and 3 great guests. And yeah, we got a lot to do for tomorrow. So I'm stoked, and we got a busy day ahead. Really fun conversation with Ash. A couple of these clips are kind of stirring the pot. The Circle L1, L2 clip is stirring the pot. You know, some of these clips around their decision making is stirring the pot. So, yeah, Nikhil, albeit a very refined speaker and calm manner yesterday morning, kind of ended up stirring the CT pot a little bit. So that's where we're at here.
We shall see.
It looks like Native Markets has
They won the proposal.
Has won the proposal.
I saw Sky conceded. They said they're still going to build a stablecoin and they're still going to do all of their own buybacks on Hyperliquid.
Wow. They will still do their buybacks?
Sky. Yeah. And that comes after the main PayPal brand account tweeted that they were coming to Hyperliquid and they wanted to onboard Venmo and
what?
All that good stuff. Yeah.
The 1 point we're all in. Wow. What a tweet.
From PayPal.
No way.
Like I called you a conspiracy theorist in our chat because you believed in this conspiracy that it was somehow native markets from the jump.
And it seems like it kind of was.
I mean, when you see Paxos and their revised proposal, and then you see PayPal and you see Venmo, it's tough to rationalize. Look, we didn't hear
from native markets
on this show, but everyone else was making a really strong public push.
Dude, I think Hyperliquid had I just checked the chart like while we were waiting for the guest. And it had this jump, and I feel like it was because of that tweet. That PayPal tweet. But anyway, that's so native markets is confirmed to have won. Is that the deal?
I don't want to say for sure, but Sky conceded and Rune congratulated native markets. So, I mean, if you have another bidder congratulating someone, I have to take that, that the current bidders are conceding.
Wow.
But I don't think the vote officially ends until the 14th, just 3 days.
Yeah, but is there a dashboard to see the vote?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
USDH tracker.xyz.
USDH tracker. It's pretty cool when crypto people just throw these websites up. Suspicious site blocked. Okay.
Validator commitments completed. Vote windows next 3 days. Yeah, Hyper Collective, Native Markets, that pretty much swung the vote because they control between Hyper Collective and Hyper Scanning, they control about 31%.
Our Okay.
Across two validators.
So native markets is going to take it then.
That's certainly what it looks like. I mean, you could check your favorite prediction market.
Yeah, let's see what's going on.
Call sheet's got. Wait, what? Call sheet has Sky at 99%. but native market's at 95. That's not right.
Polymarket's got native markets at 94. Paxos
Yeah.
at 6. Sky,
Yeah,
Frax and Agora at less than 1.
Right. That sounds more like it. I mean, I don't know why. You can still buy no shares for Paxos.
So you can get Hyperliquid to hit over 70 right now by the end of the year for 55% for 60 cents. It's pretty good.
It's a nice little option.
Yeah. Over 100, you can get it for 27 cents. But I think over 70 is easier. I mean, that thing could go over 70 in the next couple weeks here.
Talk about Nash equilibrium right there. I mean, that's how you sort of position, like, buy some over 70 shares.
Yeah.
And double your money. Not financial advice.
This guy. All righty, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. It's been a fun stream again, Rob. One more tomorrow to end the week.
Yeah. We will see you next time.
Alrighty.
Peace, guys.